y'all. Today's lesson is signed fraction operations. I'm not really going over how to add, subtract, multiply, divide fractions, but I am going to review how to do operations with signed fractions and variables. So just quick thing, if you're adding and subtracting fractions, you have to find a common denominator. Even if there's a variable, you're still going to find a common denominator. To divide fractions, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Maybe you were taught some cute little name or some fancy trick, but if it's a division problem, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal is when you flip the fraction, the second fraction. Always reduce. Don't ever leave a fraction unreduced. Make sure you reduce it, and it's okay to leave it as an improper. It is okay to leave it as an improper fraction. You do not have to change it to a mixed number. And then the last thing I want you to remember is when you are working with variables and constants that you cannot add to an x, like 2 plus x. You cannot add those together. But you can multiply 2 and x, and if you multiply, you get 2x. So that's just a reminder that, and I know it can be confusing, sometimes when we combine like terms, we say combine like terms, you cannot add 2 plus x. It just stays 2 plus x. But if you have a multiplication, then you can multiply 2 times x and get 2x. So just a little reminder. So let's do some examples. The first few examples that I have for you all have a common denominator. So these we should run through fairly quickly. If it has a common denominator, then we're just going to add or subtract depending on what the problem is. In the first one, A, negative x over 9 plus 7x over 9. My 9 is already common denominator, so I'm just going to simplify my numerator. And I already have like terms, so they both have an x. So negative x plus 7x is 6x over 9. And then we want to reduce. So I see 6 and 9 have a 3 in common, so I can reduce it by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. And I get 2x over 3, or 2/3 times x. So that's how you would work problem A. Problem B is going to be similar to that. I already have a common denominator, so I'm going to simplify the top. 6x minus 10x. And that's negative 4x over 11y. Now, 4 and 11 is already simplified. You cannot simplify 4 11ths anymore, so that would be your final answer. And then letter C, I have an x in the denominator, and that's okay. You can have an x in the denominator now, and I already have my denominators common, so I'm going to simplify my top, 5 minus 3y. But I can't subtract 5 minus 3y because this is 3 times something. And in the order of operations, we would have to evaluate that first before we could subtract. So it's just going to stay 5 minus 3y over x. And that is okay to have an expression in our numerator now. I know it's different, it's weird, you haven't seen that before, but it's okay to do that now. I have 2 you to try, so I want you to try E, F, D, and E, and then press play. Pause it and press play when you're ready to see. You try D. It's very similar to A. Negative W plus TW is going to be 1W over 3. So, W over 3. And then you try E is very similar to B. So when I subtract, I get negative 3C over 12D. But I can reduce negative 3 over 12 to negative 1C. But I'm just going to write C over 4D. So 3/12 can reduce to negative 1/4, but we don't need the 1. Now, just a little word. When you have a fraction like that, the negative sign can be in the numerator or it could be right in the middle, like this. Those are both correct. Either of those are correct. You can put it in the numerator or you can put it right in the middle of the fraction. So you might see it both ways. All right, now, what if they're not common denominators? And you are responsible for finding a common denominator. All right, so let me show you how to do that with these examples. If it's not already a common denominator and you have to find a common denominator, I'm going to show you what to do. In this first example, 2/5 over 5 minus x over 6. 5 and 6 are not common, but I bet you know just from your years of fractions what would be a good common denominator for 5 and 6, and hopefully you're thinking 30. 5 times 6, you can just multiply them. 5 times 6 is 30. Now, whatever you do to the bottom, You have to do at the top, the golden rule of fractions. So I multiplied 5 times 6. So I have to multiply that times 6. I have to multiply this whole fraction times 6. 2x times 6 is 12x. And then I come over here to this fraction. 6 times 5 was 30. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. And so now I'm going to get x times 5 is 5x. And then you bring down your subtraction sign. So now I have common denominator and I've converted my numerators to match. These are both x's. I have like terms on the top, so now I can simplify. 12x minus 5x is 7x over 30. And then I know that I cannot reduce because 7 is an odd number and it won't go into 30, so my answer is 7x over 30. Now b is a little different because my common denominator between y and 8 might be something that you're not used to. In example 1, I found a common denominator by multiplying 5 times 6. So you can use that same strategy, that same thought, to find a common denominator. So let's multiply y times 8, and that gives us 8y. It's okay to multiply a variable and a constant. My common denominator is going to be 8y. So looking at this fraction, I multiplied by 8 to get 8y. So negative 5 times 8 is negative 40. And then over here, I multiplied by y to go from 8 to 8y. I multiplied by y. So over here, I need to multiply by y, and I get 7y. And I bring my plus sign down. So if you didn't get that, pause it, rewind it, and listen to it again. I have a common denominator, so now I need to simplify my numerator. I have negative 40 plus 7y. Well, those are not like terms, so I cannot add them together. So I'm just going to leave my answer as an expression. Negative 40 plus 7y over 8y. It's okay to leave your numerator as an expression. All right. So letter C is very similar to B, and it has a variable and a constant as our denominator. For a common denominator, I'm going to multiply them together, and I'm going to get 4x, because x times 4 is 4x. Over here, I needed to multiply by 4, so I get 40. Over here, I needed to multiply by x, because 4 times x is 4x. And 3 times x is 3x. Now I have a common denominator, so I look to my numerator, 40 plus 3x. Unfortunately, I can't combine those because they are not like terms. So I'm going to leave my answer as an expression, 40 plus 3x over 4x. And that's okay. That is acceptable now in the work we're doing. All right, I want you to try. You try D, you try E. Pause it, press play when you're ready to see the answers. All right, so you try D. Common denominator is 40. And this is 25D minus 16D. Oh. Sorry, I have something itching my eye. Sorry. Okay, so 9D over 40 should be your answer. 9D over 40. And then over here, our common denominator should be 5W. I have 4W. Whoops. 2W. And over here I have 10. And so my final answer would be 2W plus 10 over 5W. And it's okay to leave an expression in your fraction. I hope you got those right. I have one more set of examples for you. All right. Now I'm just going to review some multiplying and dividing with variables. When you multiply, you just multiply straight across. And remember, you can multiply 2 and x and get 2x. So first I'm going to see if I can do any canceling, like here. 2 and 4 can both be divided by 2. 2 will go into 2 one time, 2 will go into 4 2 times. If you can cross simplify or cross cancel, then that's really just going to make it easier for you to multiply. Now I have negative 1 times x is negative x, and 5 times 2 is 10. And there you go. If you didn't cross cancel, then you would have gotten negative 2x over 20, which would then reduce. All right, example B. I can simplify. 3 will go into 3 once. 3 will go into 6 twice. So negative 1, so this is a negative 1. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. And y times 2 is 2y. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5, and y times 2 is 2y. And then we just leave it. All right, now C has this mixed number. So if you ever have a mixed number, you need to change it to an improper fraction. So change an improper fraction. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 minus 1 or plus 1 is going to be negative 7 over 3. So ignore the negative for a minute. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. But then you bring the negative down, and the whole thing is negative 7 over 3 times negative 3/4. Simplify where you can. So I can see right here that I can simplify. And this one actually doesn't even have a variable in it. So negative times negative is a positive 7. And 1 times 4 is 4. So 7/4. All right, so example D, again, I don't have any variables, but we have a division problem. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So 5, 6 times 21 over 10. 5, 6 times 21 over 10. If you can cross simplify, then please do that. So I'm going to divide it by 5. And then the other way, I'm going to divide by 3. Once you've seen all of the cross simplification that you can do and you've divided out anything they have in common, then you can multiply across. 1 times 7 is 7. And 2 times 2 is 4. And then you can leave it 7/4. There's nothing wrong with leaving it 7/4. All right, now we have a variable. Example E is a division problem. So I'm going to multiply by my reciprocal. So I've multiplied and then I've flipped it upside down. I see some cross simplifying I can do. I divided them both by 4. Now I'm going to multiply. Negative 3x times 3 is negative 9x. 1 times negative 7 is negative 7. But if I have a negative divided by a negative, it's really going to be a positive. So those negatives are going to like cancel each other out. So you're just going to have 9x over 7. Do not leave a negative in the numerator and a negative in the denominator. That would not be good. All right, you try F. I want you to try it. Pause it, try it, and then press play when you're ready to see the answer. All right. The answer, so this is negative 33 over 4 times 5 over 3w. I am going to simplify my 3 and my 33. And then I'm going to multiply negative 55 divided by 4w. Negative 55 divided by 4w. If you got that wrong, then go back and listen or email me, and we'll go over more in class next time.